Welcome to the International Schools Podcast. I'm your co-host, John Mickton, and Dan is traveling in the Middle East right now. And again, happy to be here. And of course, we always feel so privileged to have our guests. And I say that every time, but it really means a lot to us because many of our guests are super busy doing a variety of different things in their professional context. And to take the time and coordinate time zones and things always can be a little challenging. And so we're very grateful that they can join us. Today, we're going to kind of focus on this idea of leadership because we were just talking before we recorded with Greg and Warren how things have changed so much in the last 3 years if we think of the artificial intelligence context and its kind of connection and impact on schooling. And on reflecting on all the different podcasts that we've done, I thought it would be really good to have Warren Apel and Greg Clinton, both two people that come with an immense amount of experience and have been very active in this space, doing workshops and sharing resources, and in some of the professional development groups and professional networks. And I thought it'd be really nice to have them come and talk to us a bit about this. And Warren Apel is the Director of Technology at the American School in Japan. And he's been a co-founder of startups, and also he's the global project coordinator for the World Digital Schools Project. He has over 20 years of experience. He's worked in schools in Japan, India, Egypt, and the Netherlands. He's a certified Google Education Innovator, Apel Distinguished Educator, and he's a frequent presenter at NESA, EARCOS, ECIS, and ISTE. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Warren for quite a few years because we did some work together with ECIS many years ago, and periodically our paths cross, and it's always a treat to do anything with Warren. So his mission is really improve learning through purposeful and well-managed use of technology. And I think Warren really is somebody that leads that approach, and it's so important and nice to have you here, Warren, today.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for that very kind introduction.
Greg Clinton is the head of school at the American International School of Chennai. And before that, he was the IT director and research and development at the same school. And he's taught literature, philosophy in schools and universities across Peru, India, Sudan, Japan, and the United States, including Stony Brook University. And Greg is the co-founder of the IB Score Reports and an educational data service used by over 200 schools. He has a doctorate in philosophy in comparative literature and cultural studies. And he's also one of the founding members with Warren for the Global AI Education Collaborative. And he leads many projects with the NESA Digital School Project. Greg, thank you so much, and such a pleasure to have you here today.
I'm thrilled. Thanks for having us back.
So we actually met, I think it was 3 years ago, we had the panel and both of you were on the panel, and we were it was actually, I think, just when ChatGPT had been released. Am I correct in saying that? Was it that fresh?
Yes, I remember because we started the conversation and you stopped us and said, we need to give our audience some context. They don't know what ChatGPT is. And it was very, very early in that whole arc.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, both of you are leaders and you do some amazing work out there. And I thought I would love to start off with both of you sharing in your role. So Greg as a director, head of school, and Warren as a director of technology, and also a leader in many professional development contexts. How is the rise of AI and kind of the excitement around the new models, and also this hype and talk around AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, made you rethink the purpose of your own roles in schools and how we can kind of really frame our schools' pedagogic journey to be prepared and support those young people that we work with every day? And I'd just love you, maybe Greg, to start, and then Warren.
Sure. So I think if the question is, how is this making me rethink things, or I think it's making me rethink some things, and it's also making me realize the value of some of the things that are already in place. And so in terms of rethinking, especially I'm thinking back over 3 years, at the beginning of that 3-year journey, there was so much possibility, but so much uncertainty about what the technology would actually become. We had glimpses of it. It was talking to us in a new way. It was, putting ideas together in new forms, in language and in video and in images. But it wasn't very clear what the technology would be. Now we have a little bit more of a handle on what the tech is, and we're seeing that because of its broad capacity. I mean, I think of AGI, artificial general intelligence, as already having arrived. I mean, I think, uh, GPT-5, the latest frontier models are effectively smarter than your average human being. Yeah, they lack context, and yeah, they lack a certain awareness of the world. But in terms of raw intelligence, it's already there. And I can give you an example of that in a minute. But what the consequence of that is that the experience of a student in a school can change pretty profoundly. And you see this in our, more traditional schools. I'm going to call ourselves a traditional school in the sense that we have a schedule, teachers, students, whatever. We can embed agentic AI in a student experience and personalize the experience that they have in small ways, right? So it fits into the traditional model, and that's a very common thing that's happening right now across the world. And on the flip side, you've got emerging schools like, I've been reading, Warren and I were actually talking about this school called Alpha School, and they are using the AI personalization approach as the foundation for their program, and trying to shrink the amount of time that students might be doing content delivery work, right? And expand the amount of time that they're developing durable skills like collaborative problem solving and design work. So we can see right away that the shape of school can start to morph if we get really powerful, really aligned agentic learning experiences built in. But what's not changing in my mind is the need to know how to be an independent learner. Like, the only reason I can be successful and that AI doesn't take over for my thinking is because I've already developed as a thinker. So we need students to do both. They need to have, and we were saying this 3 years ago, they need to have the facility with the tech, but they also need to be independent learners and independent thinkers. Otherwise, it can undo what their experience or their growth. So that's sort of the change and the not change part that I see.
Thank you for that share out. Warren.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Greg said, and I think one of the things that makes me excited is that people like us, we've been talking about 21st century skills since the late 90s, and I've always felt that this whole idea of adaptive and personalized learning was something that was kind of around the corner, but all of the software tools that tried to do that were just sort of flashcards. And it was like some ed tech people tried really hard for 20 years and it never really stuck, and it never really disrupted education, and it never really revolutionized anything. It made it a little bit more efficient, but schools still look the same, schools still work the same. And I think and also one of those messages with 21st century skills, right, is that we need to move away from content and move towards problem solving and critical thinking. And I think that everyone bought that, right? We all said, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, still, my content's important, right? I'm still going to teach this. This is my class. I've been teaching it for 20 years. I'm not going to change that, but for sure, we'll layer in a little bit of critical thinking in there along the way. And I really think that this whole shift has the potential to really disrupt that. And I'm not entirely clear how it's going to happen. I don't know, like Greg, I think you're totally right. There are going to be some schools that maintain the same block schedule and the same list of classes, and the same, the same basic structure, and layer some AI into it. And then there's going to be some really radical new ideas. So that's super exciting for me. I also think one of the things that I love about this is that universities are finally changing. And for forever, schools have said, gosh, we really want to change. Gosh, we really want to do a better job. But, you know, until colleges change, we really can't. We're not allowed to. Colleges don't want that. We have to have a transcript because colleges need it. So we have to give kids letter grades because colleges want it. And now that college is finally changing, we can really, you know, we can really do what we've always wanted to do and focus on, yeah, critical thinking and self-directed learning and student agency and all of that. So that's super exciting to me.
I love how you gave that journey of the 90s and these ed tech companies and ed tech, you know, because I think it has been quite of a muddy experience, a lot of hope, but everything was quite cumbersome. And I think, Greg, too, you're that kind of balancing this idea that we're going to keep some of the things that we do well, but we need to also be open to that agility and kind of personalized learning. I'm wondering, because Greg, you're a head of school, and Warren, you're a director of technology, and you do a lot of professional development supporting school leaders and tech directors. I'm wondering, do you think leadership needs to change because of this context? Are you looking at your role, Greg, maybe as a school head differently because of this? And do you feel that there needs to be a new type of agility to be able to navigate that, especially because you're supporting teachers, students, and parents? And Warren, in your context, you're doing courses for school leaders and international IT directors. So you really are kind of in the forefront of also doing the professional learning. What kind of shifts do you think in the context of being a leader in both of your specific areas do you think needs to change, or you're already seeing yourself recalibrate in a way to say, okay, I can't do this like I used to because this is a new context? And I don't know, Warren, do you want to maybe start?
Yeah, I have ideas. I have thoughts. I think one of those things is just a shift in the amount of time that we spend on certain tasks that I think is, for me anyway, it's really good, right? That that I am able, and this is the same kind of just basic efficiency that's happening to everybody. It's happening to accountants. It's happening to, you know, radiologists, right? Like, just part of my job is helping people face to face through a technology challenge. Part of my job is setting strategy or teaching somebody something. And then part of my job is submitting invoices or, you know, just boring menial tasks. And if I can offload some of those menial tasks to an AI, then I have more time to be in a classroom, and that's great, right? And so and even when it comes to you know, important decisions that I have to make, I'll give you an example. You know, when a person wants to use a new piece of software and they say, oh, hey, I want to use this piece of software. The act of evaluating that and just saying, does this have data privacy issues? Do other schools use this? Is this legitimate? Just investigating that well used to take hours. And it needed to be done by somebody who really understood privacy and technology and software. And I can get ChatGPT or Perplexity to give me a really good rundown of the terms of service, of the user reviews. Like, I get all of the legwork done, and then I can think about, is it good for learning, right? And so it shaves off so much of my time and allows me to be more human connected and human centered, which I love.
That's a great example, and I think your point's a really important one. In your role, you know, the software and the user privacy, especially for schools in Europe that had GDPR, and now we have the EU AI Act. A lot of that work is very cumbersome, as you described so nicely. And I think that's just a great anecdote to say, yeah, I can actually offload that. And I think, you know, in your role as an IT director, as you said, you want to be in the classroom and face-to-face as much as possible. Thank you for that. Greg, in your context as a school leader.
Well, yeah, so there's a number of different ways I guess I could address this. You know, does it make work more efficient? Does it make work more effective? Does it change the nature of work? I would say probably all of them. And in some cases, I'm far more efficient, like Warren was saying. I find that my first connection to ChatGPT and to large language models in general, the element that I stuck to was a strategic thought partner. How should I approach this problem? That was always the biggest bang for my buck when I was using large language models early on, and it remains a strength. Now, having done that quite a bit over the years, it goes back to my point about needing to be an independent thinker. Too often now, as a leader, I get what look like strategy documents from different leaders in my school. I'm not going to call out anyone, but I'm saying I get these things, these documents. I can tell they were written by an AI, and they're really long because AI loves to proliferate. It just loves to talk and talk and talk, right? It loves words, and it's great, but it really requires the best strategies are short and they are refined, and the best thinking is refined. And so I find as a kind of generation tool, it's amazing, but it definitely requires us to be the editors, be the refining element. And that I'm worried about. I'm a little worried about, frankly, because I think, if people continue to generate these sorts of planning documents without the refining routine, then we're just going to be kind of mired in planning documents. We're gonna get sick of them, honestly. I think that's my prediction. In 3 years we can talk about that. But as a starting point, absolutely incredible, super powerful. Now, does it make me like Warren's point? I think was something like it shaves off time on tasks so I can be with my human colleagues and whatnot. I find that it doesn't actually save me any time. It gives me a more powerful space to spend my time. So for example, because it's empowered me as a coder in different ways, I find I spend a lot of time building things that I probably wouldn't, have built in the past just because I didn't have those particular skills or powers. So I build a lot of things and I spend a lot of time doing it. It's not as if I'm, drinking coffee and chatting with people. I'm like really engaged with these projects that I feel empowered to engage with. So that's an example of, I think, an outcome for students too. We may not be saving time. Like Alpha School wants to compress the amount of learning time and then expand the amount of interpersonal time. I actually think for some students, this is going to expand the amount that they can engage with in terms of their own learning. So, you put a coding coach in front of some kids and they will go a million miles an hour now when it would have taken, they may have had to wait until next semester to join Introduction to Computer Science. Like in the past, they may have just had to wait for the schedule to catch up with their interest. Now, of course, they can fill their time with that actual learning. So, the efficiency thing, I think it's going to work for some tasks, developing strategic plans and things. I think it's going to, we're not going to, this is always in the history of technology has always been the thing that will allow us more leisure. And it's never been that, right? It's never been that. We just fill our time with more powerful, impactful things. And I think AI is just it's going to be that. It already is for me. So
I thank you. And also it's interesting that you bring up this idea that you can, it can amplify your passion and interest, and now you can do more of those in a way that really empowers you. I'm wondering, Greg, because you have a leadership team, you are the director of the school or head of school. Sorry if I'm naming your title, but I'm wondering how much has this conversation been critical in your own work as a leadership team, and when you talk to other heads, what is maybe changing in the conversations you're having because of this presence of artificial intelligence? And then Warren, I would love to hear your point from the work that you're doing with school leaders and teachers.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's going to be a phenomenon that goes slowly until one point where it trips and there's a tipping point, and then suddenly it will go very, very quickly. So right now, the slow moving part is, how do we integrate it into our current practice? How does it align with what we know about pedagogy? How do we deal with these ethical issues that we might talk about later in the chat? Those sorts of things. And those are conversations like anything else, right? Like, any other, influence on school culture or school systems. In the future, though, it's probably going to hit a tipping point where we're starting to have conversations about recruiting and what kind of staff we need, like what kind of skills are we looking for in the people that join our school, and how are they able to use and leverage emerging tools to be better and to be more effective and to be more impactful, because we're already saying that about ourselves, right? Like, how can I use this to be a better leader? How can I use this to be a better strategic planner, whatever? Very, very quickly, we're going to say, how are we expecting teaching to be amplified in the same way? And how do we, the measurement of quality in education and teaching is highly fraught, right? It's very difficult to do. And yet, surely we should talk about how this is going to make us better at what we do as practitioners. So that's one conversation that's sort of emerging. I think, I don't think that it's hit the point where we're talking about blowing up the schedule and doing something completely, totally brand new. And this is a learning. I will just say to the listeners, this is my first year as a head of school. I have taken a lot of notes and sat next to heads of school and done a lot of planning with heads of school in the past. But it's kind of like when you have your first child, you can read all the books and study all you want and feel prepared, but you are not prepared, and you learn quite a bit even just on day one. And on day one, it starts to take shape that a school is a much more complex network of forces, some of which are economic. So, I can't, even if I'm a dreamer and I'm saying, oh, let's start from scratch and do it brand new, right? There's an economics to a school. There's a set of expectations that come from our parent community and from our students even. And so managing those and sort of fitting them into a plan for the future is a very complicated task. And I think I'm excited about that work, like the learning together with parents, learning together with students, learning together with university admissions directors. Like, they'll come and talk to us about what kind of students they're aiming to recruit, and we have to sort of have those conversations. And it's much more complicated than it used to be. I think my life got a little more complicated.
Thank you, Greg. And I think it's so interesting how you do highlight that the school's complexity often, and the economic and the voices of the different community members, are an important component that sometimes might prevent us from just, as you said, blowing the schedule out of water and starting from scratch. And I think, that's something, and we have a long history of that. It's almost, these routines are almost in our DNA as educators and as students. I grew up, we all went to school and had schedules, and now we're working in schools, and it just seems normal. And it seems, well, how else could you do it? However many different permutations you might create in the schedule's always going to be there at some level. So I think that's a really important point you shared. Warren, you do a lot of work with teachers, and also you are running a professional development program for IT directors, and you work, of course, you're part of the senior leadership team at the American School in Japan. I'm curious, through your leadership lens, what are you noticing and what might have shifted?
Yeah, I think, I think you could look at just the little quick wins, and especially I think 2 or 3 years ago, right, when it was brand new, these are mostly all little quick wins, right? So like, I can have it help me write my emails better, right? So like AI is a spell checker. That's for a lot of people, I think that's the entry point, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not revolutionary. And I think if you think about what the work of a school leader is, like moving forward school strategy, setting strategy and moving forward, I think a lot of us get mired down in the day-to-day job of running a school. And every now and then, you look up at the poster with the goals on it or the mission on it, but that's not the thing that you're doing every day. But one of those cool things with AI is, I'll give you an example. Teacher evaluations are just sort of a thing that we always do every year. And every teacher gets their document and they go through the process and they get observed. And it's supposed to be part of professional growth. It's how you help a young novice teacher grow. And it's also how you help an experienced teacher know what they need to do next. And I think looking at teacher evaluations 10 years ago reminds me a lot of looking at report card comments 10 years ago, right? Where you have to write a bunch of text about a person. And so you say, oh, they try hard and they need to do a little bit better. Like, that's not really growth, right? And it's also not really mission aligned. And it would be really hard as a principal to want to give this message to somebody about something specific that you want them to do differently, while also thinking about what the school's top 3 priorities for next year are going to be, and then merge that together in your head. And especially if what you have to do right now is type a bunch of these at the end of the year. And I really think I have seen some really good success with building whether it's a gem or a custom GPT or just a conversation, to say, here are 10 school strategy documents. Here's the agreements that we've made. Here's our school's vision. And here are all my notes I've made and all my observations. What are 3 things that I should really tell this teacher that help move school strategy forward? And like that feels to me like removing the flywheel on school culture change. Like, also, it's a dangerous leap off a cliff, because if the teacher gets it and says, you clearly just threw this into ChatGPT and pasted it back out, and it reads like ChatGPT and it sounds like an AI, and it seems to me like you didn't even do an evaluation, right? Like, this is the danger with AI, right? Is that it could make this really good, but it could also just make it slop. And so people who are skilled leaders who harness it, I really think can move their school culture forward. And then I think, the other one is surveys. I think schools have been misusing surveys for years. I think we do parent satisfaction surveys. We throw out Google Forms, and then we get giant piles of data back. And we just look at that and go, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And then you scroll through it and you find that one angry parent who's really mad about the cafeteria. And you're like, well, I looked at the survey. It seems like the parents are unhappy with the cafeteria. And, very few school leaders are skilled in statistics, like, and spreadsheets. And so it's really hard to get away from just the human feeling of reading through a bunch of feedback and trying to turn that into action. And boy, the way that AI can summarize a giant pile of feedback and then tell you a few people are saying this, most people are saying this, it's really good.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
that's something that you can use in your parent communication, in your goal setting. It finally allows us to acknowledge the time that the parents spent in giving us all of this feedback, and then say, now we are going to look at it and use it and read it.
Thank you, Warren. Both of you are really saying something that I think is super important, because you do get, I know I was talking to one principal and they said, if I see another professional growth development paragraph that all sounds like ChatGPT, I'm going to shoot myself, because there is this capacity to engage with it, copy, paste it, and then send it out. And I think what both of you are really highlighting is that critical thinking engagement that has to occur. How purposeful are you with your prompt, and what is the outcome that you want? And how much you are part of that process and checking and analyzing and editing and coming back. And you mentioned the gems and the custom chat GPTs, which I'm a huge fan of. I think those, if you really create, a very thoughtful question, can really help you, and understand that whatever output comes, you as an expert, a knowledge expert, still have to do a lot of work. And I think, the summarizing of surveys and strategic plans, I think one of the dangers that I'm seeing is people are seeing it as a shortcut. And that shortcut is, and I think it's out of really honest, everybody's busy. They're like, oh, great. Now I don't have to spend an hour doing that. Let me throw it in there. I kind of trust it. It generally is pretty good. I'll just copy, paste, and move forward. And I would love to hear how you both, how are you ensuring that people understand that process? Because I think, generally we love shortcuts as human beings. Teachers and yourselves in your roles, we're super busy. And as Warren said, we're not always worrying about the mission, but there's the day-to-day kind of granular creative tensions that we have to manage. And so anything that's going to accelerate some of those workflows where maybe we can subcontract it out and just know if we copy and paste and move forward, that's off the to-do list. But you both are really sharing very specific strategies to ensure it's meaningful, it's purposeful, it's ethical in many ways. And how are you both in your roles ensuring people understand that? Because people are busy and they want a quick fix. And how do we balance the quick fix against more thoughtful engagement? And I'll let Greg maybe start, because you're shaking your head. Not furiously, but you're shaking your head.
Yes. So what you're saying is very resonant. And I was even going to build sort of on this point based on what Warren was sharing. But the outcomes that Warren was saying, it's really good at sort of summarizing and drawing these links between things. And, how should I be thinking about this given 10, 15 different strategy documents, whatever. That is true. It is extremely good at making connections that didn't exist between disparate texts, or you can say, rewrite. It was one of the early ChatGPT parlor tricks where give me this Shakespeare sonnet, but talk like a pirate, and it would rewrite that. And it's this amazing way of blending different genres and different texts. But it has a tendency to be sycophantic. So I remember a few months ago, and we have to be careful of this. So this is in answer to your question, what do we need to be thinking about? A few months ago, I think one of ChatGPT, the base products, was upgraded and everyone was excited. It wasn't GPT-5, it was 4.1 or whatever. And it was just, everyone was excited. Ooh, it's better, it's better. And here's a prompt, tell me about my top 10, weaknesses or my top 10 strengths, and just give me a profile of myself based on all the conversations we've had. I remember it was because it could search through your
history.
And what it produced was the most sunshiny thing I have ever seen. It was like, you are borderline genius. You are changing the world, Greg. You are just absolutely incredible. It was just going on. I was like, what is happening? I remember a family member of mine from the US sent me their version, and they were so excited about the results. They were like, this is right on. I was like, oh dear. So the point being that what we have to do, even when we have a very measured prompt, even when we have a data set that we want to make sure we get a reasonable analysis from AI on, we have to cultivate the mindsets of sort of self-reflection and being self-critical. I was just looking at my bookshelf and I pulled up, there's this book called The Scout Mindset by Julia Galef. And the subtitle is Why Some People See Things Clearly and Others Don't. And it's all about this kind of searching for the unbiased truth in reality, in what's in front of you, and not sort of, you have to develop this mindset that doesn't just reinforce what you want to hear and what you already believe. And so if we take, that would be my first piece of advice to anybody who is incorporating this into their work and life. It's that this AI wants to please you. This leads to potential problems, and that's the first kind of reality check for you as a user. You have to recognize that it wants to do exactly, it wants to tell you what you want to hear, and you don't always want to hear what you want to hear. That's actually probably, it's the opposite. And so anyway, that'd be my one. So I'd go into conversations around that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because at the center of human technology, their last blog post really reminds us that these large language models are about engagement, not well-being. And I think that's a really important one. And then there's another big thing, and his name is Michael, and I forget his last name. He's a professor, and he highlights how there's always audience bias and optimism bias, and that, you know, you see these things want to please you, because if you're pleased, you tend to come back. And I think your point's really, really important, because we are not all geniuses, however much we would like to be, and we would all like to be amazing, and we can keep that in our own heads, but reality might be different. So I think your point's a really important one, is these biases creep in, and I'll put it in the show notes. This gentleman, Michael, professor at Wharton, was saying that we really have to be careful about this audience and optimism buy-in, and also understand that they're programmed for engagement, because they want you to be there, and your well-being might not be their priority. Warren, your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess, okay, so the question really is about the time saving versus communicating really well that this wasn't just about time saving, right? And so I think, you know, you've got some examples, and like an example just from last week. There's a teacher who got an email that looked like it was a phishing attack. And she takes a screenshot of it, and is this a phishing attack? And it looked really sophisticated when it looked just like it came from Microsoft or whatever. But, you know, I was able to take a screenshot of that, put it into ChatGPT, and it goes through bullet points like the phone number isn't the phone number of Microsoft's, and this is like, it's written like this, and it's asking. Anyway, it wrote exactly what I would have written if I had done a long, detailed investigation of it. And so this task of check to see, is this legit, got shrunken from 15 minutes to 2 minutes. So like in one level, on really brief little low-level quick wins, saves time. And those, you can easily come up with examples like that. But the example of providing professional feedback using AI, if you're doing it right, it takes longer. And I think like really deep thought that's enhanced with an AI thought partner that's going through multiple revisions, it can be as long or longer than the original. So I think really the point is not to make it with those sorts of tasks. The point isn't just to make it go faster. It isn't to end up with more time to do other stuff. The point is just to do it better. Now, how do you communicate that? And that, I think, is the big challenge, right? Is that the end user gets a document, whether that's a teacher getting an essay from a kid, or a person getting an evaluation from their supervisor. You can't tell how much effort went into it. And this is one of those big anxiety-producing things about AI in society, but also AI in education specifically, is that when I do it, it saves me time, but when you do it, it's a lazy shortcut, is one way to say it. But a better way of saying it is just, we really don't have insight into the process anymore. And 20 years ago, if somebody hand wrote something with a pen, you could look at how much ink was on the paper and go, gosh, that took you a long time. And you really can't anymore, right? So I'll say my supervisor last year wrote my evaluation using AI, and in addition wrote, I'm going to call it a 4-page document outlining the process they went through. And that document wasn't like polished for publication. It was a little bit sketchy, notesy, not sketchy in the bad sense, but it was his thoughts. What was the first step? What did he do next? Which documents did he pull up? How did he have the conversation? And then he did some, screenshots and some copy pasting from just to kind of give a feel for it. And one of the things that the documents explicitly said is that the process took longer than it used to, right? Like he was really upfront about that. But before I read the evaluation, I read this. How was he planning to do it? And then I read the follow-up part, like how it actually went. And then I read the finished product. So when I got it, I wasn't saying to myself, oh, you just threw this into ChatGPT. I was like, wow, you've really done this. So, and where I'm going with this is this. It takes easily twice as long to also write an essay about the thing that you just wrote. Like a process essay talking about the process that you took to write the essay is like triple work. But if that's what it takes, like, I think you benefit from thinking about your own thinking. You benefit from documenting your process, and the end user benefits from reading about your process. And it's metacognitive, and it's insightful. And it stops you from, if you know that you have to share this process thing, it's going to keep you from just quickly, lazily making slop.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think this might be the future of an assignment, right? Like here's the task, here's the project, kids are going to turn in a thing, but the thing that's really going to be analyzed by the teacher is the reflective document where you talk about which tool you used, how you used it, what the first draft looked like, what the second draft looked like, what was going through your head when you did this, why did you pick this over that, how did you make it better? And I think that's a big ask. It's a big ask of students. It's a big ask of teachers. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be popular, but I think it would be really good.
No, and I think
it's going to.
Go ahead, Greg.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say it's going to require some of our redesigning. We're going to have to set aside time to redesign what assessment looks like and be more intentional about, because under our current schedule model, you're right. This would take more time. And I think, so I hear some of the AI companies that are circling around education, I hear them say, save time, save time, save time so that you can do something else. And I don't know, I think that's maybe slightly misleading. And really what we have to do is think more fundamentally and be ready for it. Again, back to my point about it going slow until it doesn't, it goes fast. We're in the slow period. In the fast period in the future, we may have to do some redesigning. So it behooves us to start thinking about what that looks like now before it becomes a requirement or a necessity. But can I just share two things? One, I want to share my quick win. My quick win with AI, I was visiting Japan, and Japan has famously complex toilets. And I was in a restaurant and I couldn't read any of the buttons. So I couldn't figure out how to flush the toilet. But how would I have done this without ChatGPT? You just take a picture of the panel and it can read all the stuff and explain, which was super useful. So that was my quick win. But I wanted to also double down on what Warren was saying about the ways that we have to build in extra time for students and how potentially useful that is. I think it's such an irony. AI is going to turn out to be a series of contradictions. It's going to save us time. It'll require more time. And ultimately, that requirement is going to expand our thinking, and it's going to make us be more human more of the time. It's this really interesting back and forth. I think that's unfolding.
I think it's really interesting that Warren and Greg, you're also amplifying that, is the idea that this metacognition. And it's so nice to see that your supervisor was transparent. So this kind of ties into kind of the last topic, is this idea of ethics and transparency. I know I do a lot of workshops for parents, and often they'll say, oh, what percentage of the report cards are done by AI? And we don't, some schools don't have an actual policy saying we use AI and this is how it's used. And some schools do. I know at the PTC, we have a very clear policy as trainers, what we use AI for, how we use it, and what you can expect. And we do the same for the participants when they do their final action research and their action projects. There's a real clear delineation, and it really kind of reflects what you're saying, Warren, is that we're explaining the process. How did we use the tool? Why did we use the tool? How did this help us? And really the final product is not as important as this process, as you say, metacognition. For both of you, so this idea of transparency and ethics, as school leaders, what do you think schools should do, or what are schools doing maybe in your context to make sure people understand this metacognition process is so important, and that we need to be transparent when we're interacting with each other as a school, actually having a statement or a policy? I would love to hear as school leaders what you would recommend, or what maybe you're doing, or what you think we should do. Warren, do you want to kick off?
Sure. I mean, I think we wrote a guidelines document in the spring after ChatGPT came out, right? Thanksgiving time, right before Christmas break, and it was a neat new idea that people had read about, and then everybody played with it over winter break. And then when we came back, it was almost a crisis. What are we going to respond? And so, we pulled together and wrote a series of guidelines that were really good at the time. And I tweak them every now and then just to kind of make sure that it's still accurate, especially when we call out specific tools that change their name or whatever. I feel like it's still holding up pretty well, even though the technology is changing rapidly. Because it focuses a lot on keeping the human in the loop and focusing on process over product, which are all things that are important. And I think that it's maybe it's a little bit too broad to make very specific rules about, because it looks different in different divisions and different ages, and you have some rules that are coming from the outside, right? Like 12-year-olds can't use this product and 14-year-olds can use this, but should either of them be using it, right? So like sometimes outside agencies are making the decisions, and sometimes we have to decide what's right. I think one of the things that I am really excited about this year, as I look at our rules and guidelines and protocols, is how much student voice is in there. And when we first wrote them, there were like focus groups where kids talked about what they were, worried about or excited about. But that was before any of us had really used it, and before any of us had really solid experience or informed, perspective on it. So there is an annual, so far it's only been 2 years in a row, but MIT has this AI in Education conference in the summer.
That's right.
And one of their threads through it is a student panel, student posters, student papers. It's really one of the only conferences I know of that is really aimed at people under 18. And there's a call for papers, and last year it closed in May, right, which gives you all school year to work on this. But one of the topics was like, how involved were you in your school's policies? And I think like I could imagine students at my school writing really passionate essays about how they weren't involved at all, or about how they feel that they were listened to. But what I would love is this year, students who are excited about that, who want to write about that, keep that in mind as an end goal, and then help us evaluate, like now that we've been using AI, now that it's all over, now that it's just a normalized thing, what should the rules be like? How much agency should a student have? Should the rules be different for adults than kids? Like all of that stuff is really exciting, and to think that that we have, not just to say like, I would like to form this committee so that we update our document, but to say, if you do a really good job with this, you could present this at MIT this summer. And that would really be like the carrot that motivates a committee of students to really want to write policy. I think that would be really cool.
And I think your point about student voice is because, to be honest, most of us, well, me, I'm an older generation. In 20 years' time, 30 years' time, my commitment and engagement with AI will be very different than somebody that's a middle schooler or going into the workforce. And I think them having a student voice, and I like the way you say, maybe it's different rules for adults and students, and them really explain, because giving them that agency also gives us a perspective that maybe we're not aware of, and they might be looking at it in a very different way. So I think that's a wonderful idea. And like you say, when kids can present at a conference, what greater motivation, especially something with a reputation like MIT. Thank you, Warren, for that. Greg, in just your school leader, so you very likely, you have parents coming, oh, that teacher wrote an AI email, I'm really upset. Just curious, on as a school head, what are the kind of things that are percolating up and you're saying, oh, we need to recalibrate on our policies?
100%. There are risks here, and school leaders should be very attuned to them. One of the things that we did was we hired a consultant. He's an educator, very talented developer, and has been super collaborative with school leaders around the world in international schools. His name is Ryan Tannenbaum. We hired him.
We had Ryan on here over the summer. Yeah, wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful.
He's really plugged in, and so we had him at the school because one of his important not discoveries per se, but like the way he's able to show the risks of allowing AI to be an assessment evaluator are very powerful, and they stick with teachers. And I think it's an important message because you can really go astray if you don't have that that critical waypoint in your workflows. Like if a teacher says, all right, here's 50 essays, give me 50 reports, and evaluate it according to the rubric, the AI will happily oblige. I remember the early days, I was putting IB rubrics in there and having it grade papers, thinking, holy moly, like, this is going to totally change English teaching forever. But little did I know, right, that it's so fragile. Its response is, again, it's sycophantic, and it's noisy, and potentially, it's not super valid. And I've seen real life examples of that, but Ryan is able to show teachers that. So we had him come in to do these workshops with our teachers so that they understood the risks. Now, I think actually email communication, I think that we should all, everywhere in the world now, we should just expect great email communication, because why not? It's free to make your email perfect. And I'm totally fine as long as I'm not reading a novel. I'm fine reading an AI generated email. I am, because it's clear, right? If I'm reading, a 5-part with each one having 3 bullet points, always 3 bullet points, then I'm like, okay, let's just have a conversation. But yeah, I think we should expect great communication. I remember when, I was working in the IT office, and the IT team has a lot of communication touch points with parents and with students and everything. Suddenly, like overnight, our communication capacity jumped by, an order of magnitude. Really, it was kind of, we created these custom GPTs to like respond to parent inquiries and things, and it just became so much more fluid and clear. But I do think that it's important for school leaders to beware the automation of evaluations, sort of in the way that Warren was saying. His head of school did not lean on the AI, used it in all its different ways, but didn't lean on it to produce the actual evaluation. That is something that AI can't be trusted with yet. Even though it will do it for you because you've asked, you really need to be thinking critically about that piece of it.
How explicit do schools need to be about those things? So, in the work that I do with different schools on workshops, you always get these stories where there's no school policy. So some people are using Copilot, some people are using ChatGPT, and the school maybe doesn't have a Google Gemini education workspace account. So kind of everybody's their subcontractor with whichever frontier model they want. And there is no kind of oversight. How explicit do you think schools need to be in the sense like you need to use Gemini because it's part of our Google workspace for education, or you need to use Copilot because it's part of our Office 365? How explicit do you think schools need to be in communicating that and holding teachers to sticking to it?
I mean, need or like, I think there are different ways to approach that. I think in the early days, it was let's experiment, let's figure out what's working. Now the systems are solidifying so that, yeah, you can have a Google workspace. You know that the data privacy agreements around that tool are such that your students and your teachers are protected and whatnot. So you can start to insist on, especially around a data privacy angle. I think the visibility into the use is another case. Like for us, we adopted Flint. Flint is the AI tool that can be integrating AI in the classroom. And it's also useful if you're a teacher and you want to just use a frontier model for whatever. And we get visibility into the uses so that we can maintain a kind of a safety net around it. Now, I also use Claude, ChatGPT, and anything else that comes across my screen, but I'm also careful and I understand what's going on. I think systemically, those tools are emerging and we should take those seriously.
Warren?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about this. So one of the things is, if the thing is free, it's really hard to tell people that they can't use it.
Yeah.
Right. So if something costs $300, they're not going to be likely to just do it on their own. They're going to say, hey, can the school pay for this? And then if you have to pay for something, then you can force a process, right? Before we pay for it, we have to all agree that this is good to use. And I know things are different in Europe because, the government will crack down on you if you do something wrong. But, outside of the GDPR, if there's a teacher who finds a free AI tool and then just starts to use it, it's really hard as an institution to say you're not allowed to do that. You can say, here's why I think that's a bad idea, right? So one of those examples is we have Gemini for Workspace and we've got a data privacy agreement. Every teacher can use Gemini for Workspace. But it took Google a couple of years to they're behind OpenAI, right? So like OpenAI was so first out of the gate that everybody knows ChatGPT and everybody's made an account with it. So, but what I can do is say, hey, look, if you're using ChatGPT and you're using the free version, you can't put student names in it. You can't put sensitive information in it. Just be really careful because they're training on your data and they're going to sell it. And just like you really shouldn't. And if you use Gemini, there's the privacy is there, the safety is there. So I've done my part of trying to convince you. The problem is when something is much better than the other thing, right? So like Firefly, I love the fact that Adobe trained their image generator on licensed images that the creators are paid for. It is the ethical choice if you care about artists, visual artists, and graphic designers, And when you use it and you put the same prompt into ChatGPT, ChatGPT is way better. Like Firefly is just, it's got a nice interface. It does an okay job, and ChatGPT will always make better images. And so to tell somebody you should really do this because it's the ethical right thing to do, knowing that the less ethical, less right thing is just going to be higher quality, that's a really hard ask. And so, I mean, I think part of it is just trying to just explain why this might be better than that, and then just let them make the right choice on their own rather than force them.
Yeah.
And I also, I mean, I just have one, oh my gosh, just, this is so different than it was 25 years ago, because those of us who have been in tech in schools for a long time, we will remember that there was a time when the school bought a new license for a thing, and then everybody had to go into the theater and watch the demo and be trained on the thing. And then so Atlas Rubicon is the one that comes to mind, if anybody remembers that one, right? But
they're still around.
Yeah.
Good for them. But then you would have this all teachers must by the end of Thursday have created 2 units in the new software program, and they have to come to the training session. If you did that with an AI tool and then you forced every teacher to make a lesson using the new thing, the kids would get burned out on it in a week. And I think it's just much better if it's organic than if everybody is required to go in lockstep.
Yeah. And I think this organic that you're talking is also, highlights people's agility now with some of these tools, kind of jumping from one to the other. They may be like one frontier model for certain things, like maybe Perplexity more for research and resources, and maybe Claude for, essay writing and a more human voice. I think that's a really good point. This has been amazing, as always, when you guys come on. It's just like we could keep going, but I know you're both very busy, and you're in Asia, so it's heading into the evening. What we do usually at the end, we just ask you, is there some reflection point or something you would like our audience, which is educators, so teachers and school leaders, and also students, just something that you would want them to think about as we wrap up this podcast?
I guess we spend a lot of time talking about danger and critical thinking and sort of holding back. But to be honest, most of my time with AI is spent joyfully creating new things that I didn't feel I had the ability to create in the past. And I would hope that other people have that experience, that they engage with AI to make new things. I know that Claude, ChatGPT, all of these tools allow you to create something new, and I'd encourage them. And if you don't know how to do that, that's the first thing you should ask ChatGPT or Claude. What can I create with you that I don't know how to do right now? What can we create together? And that's just such a great entry point, and it's fulfilling in a way that a lot of technology isn't, in my experience. So, yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Warren.
I think almost everybody has heard this phrase by now, but I know that when you hear it the first time, it's really fun. But the AI that you're using right now is the worst that it'll ever be.
Yes.
And it's so amazing and it's so magical, but it is just going to get better every week, forever. And that's it's a little bit scary, but it's also kind of optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with anything that gets better, we need to always be mindful of what are the pros and cons, and having that balanced approach. And both of you really highlighted that through this conversation. To our audience, of course, the show notes, I do encourage you to follow Greg and Warren on social media. They're both active on LinkedIn. And I know Warren is kicking off, and very likely by the time this is out, you will be in the middle of your new course with 21st Century Learning, which is super exciting. And Greg and Warren are often active with EARCOS and in that space, so make sure to follow them, and I'm sure they'll be happy to connect with you if you're at the same conference. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. And we have a date in 3 years. Is that okay?
Yeah,
I'll be here. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. To our audience, thank you again. We just keep getting more of you joining our LinkedIn, and we so appreciate the comments and also the feedback and suggestions, and we appreciate candid feedback. I think that only makes us better, and we really are grateful for you keeping with us. We're almost at 200 episodes, so thank you for being so faithful, and we look forward to seeing you at our next episode. Warren and Greg, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. We truly appreciate your insights and thought. You are just two wonderful thought leaders, and it's a privilege to be here in the room with you. Thank you very much, both of you.